I'm Leandra Letterman.
And I'm Allison Christians, and it's time to break into tax. We are two very well seasoned tax law professors. We've seen a lot of students come into the tax classroom, some thinking that they weren't interested in tax, and then leaving the tax class saying, actually, that was really interesting. I just needed to break in. And so we thought we would do this video series to kind of help students figure out the ropes, figure out some of the vocabulary.
I tell my students that learning tax is a little bit like learning a foreign language. You kind of want to have everything at once in order to learn the first things. But just like when the instructor comes into the classroom and says hello for the first time, and you kind of figure out what that means. And at the same time, you're absorbing some other information and you're building these blocks that will help you understand the more complex things. The same thing is true of tax, that it can be broken down into these bits, just like our acronym.
Yeah, exactly. Law is a language and tax is like a dialect of that language, and a particularly arcane, jargon-filled one, but you actually can figure it out.
That's right. Tax is a code often.
And we're going to crack the code.
Exactly.
I'm Allison Christians. I am the H. Heward Steichman Chair in Tax Law at McGill University. I was trained in the US. I have a JD from Columbia and my LLM from the NYU tax program. I practiced for a couple of years at Debevoise and Plimpton and a couple of years at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, doing all tax work, tax transactional work. I love doing multinational tax work as a lawyer, but I knew when I was doing tax practice that I actually wanted to teach. And so I went on the market and started my teaching career as a visiting assistant professor at Northwestern University. From there, went to a tenure track position at the University of Wisconsin and was asked to come and join the faculty at McGill as the chair in tax law here. And I'm from Canada originally, so it seemed like a neat idea to become a true comparativist, learning Canadian tax law and kind of applying the principles back and forth. So my research, maybe it's not surprising, is mostly international. I like to think about the international implications of tax law, and especially with an eye towards the development aspects of international tax and tax policy.
So I'm Leandra Letterman. I graduated from Bryn Mawr College in 1987. I was a Romance languages major, specializing in French and Spanish. And from there, I went to law school. I got my JD in 1990 from New York University School of Law. And then I practiced for 2 years at White and Case in Manhattan, mostly doing tax. And I determined that I definitely wanted to be a tax lawyer. And I returned to NYU and got my LLM in taxation, graduating in 1993. And then I clerked for a US tax court judge, the late Judge David Larrow. And from there, I started teaching in 1994. I started at Mercer Law School in Macon, Georgia. I moved from there in 1997 to George Mason Law School. I was at George Mason for about 7 years, minus 1 year visiting at the University of Texas. And then I moved to Indiana University Maurer School of Law in Bloomington, Indiana, where I'm the William W. Oliver Professor of Tax Law and Director of the Tax Program. And I've been at Indiana since 2004, minus the fall of 2015, where I visited at the University of Chicago. I also teach a short course in Spain every fall at the University of Navarra. My research spans individual and corporate income tax and tax procedure and administration. I've written a lot about tax compliance and evasion, and also about the US tax court. And I had a Fulbright research grant in 2019, where I was at the University of Luxembourg researching transparency of tax rulings. So let's talk about what Break Into Tax is and what you can find on this channel.
We plan to include videos that cover some of the basics that are in an intro tax class or a tax policy class, maybe a little bit of corporate partnership thrown in, maybe a little tiny international once in a while.
The channel will have some series such as legal writing tips, various aspects of tax policy colloquia or seminars.
So we're thinking like, how do we help students break into the vocabulary? How do we help them break into the logic? How do we help them break into why you might actually like tax, why you might actually find tax interesting? Even if you're not necessarily thinking about being a tax lawyer, you actually might get a lot out of that class.
Yeah, and how do you break into statutory reading?
Hmm.
How do you break into tax as a career? What
Right.
if you've discovered to your surprise that you love tax? I have a lot of students who find that after they take the first tax course and they say, how can I make this my career?
Hmm.
And that's not necessarily obvious. There's also a variety of settings in which you can practice tax, and there's no reason that you would know about them unless you hear from people who are familiar with the range of tax careers.
You and I have a lot of experience learning about all the different kind of career paths. Some of that learning has come from our students. So I have learned what opportunities there are because I've had students who have gone and found really interesting things to do. So we'll talk about those at some point as well.
So this includes substantive tax issues. It also includes the whole array of things that you might find as a law student or as someone else fairly new to tax that are related to the practice or study of tax.
And if our viewers have any ideas about what they think they would like us to talk about, add them to the comments below.
Watch this space for more content as you break into tax.
See you next time.